fans. Hey, what's up, Cloudways fans? Good to have everyone here today celebrating 20 years of WordPress. We've got a pretty awesome panel here for you. Talk about website care and maintenance as a retention and upselling tool for digital agencies. We've got some agency rock stars here today to help on this topic and provide some unique perspectives to help you grow your business. I'm your host today, Brent Weaver, a Cloudways Maverick, agency owner, also founder of UGurus, a business coaching and training program for digital agencies. I'm hanging out here with Kelly, man. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kelly Hodsdon. Founded a company called 123 Enterprises. We do custom website development, and almost for 20 years, 18 years, our choice for framework would be WordPress. So been around for a little while.
Awesome, man. You've been using WordPress for just about as long as WordPress has been WordPress. So
just about.
Yeah, very cool. Nick, man, you're up next. Tell us about yourself.
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name's Nick Baudoin. Been working with WordPress probably around 10 years. Started off kind of just as a solo developer, and then eventually founded an agency called Alkali. And that really kind of came out of building websites, people wanting to continue that relationship, but obviously having to always kind of move on to the next thing. And that sort of ended up always being like, hey, here's some maintenance and sort of retainer packages to sort of go along. So when this topic came up, I thought it was a perfect fit.
Very cool, man. Well, welcome. Really excited to have your perspective here. As somebody, all of us have probably sold these types of retainers and packages and had to deliver them. So looking forward to hearing your insights as well. And Jason, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Jason. I started an agency in '99 and ran that for 12 years to grow to an 8-figure business and sell it, working with clients like Lotus Cars and Hitachi. And then been coaching agencies ever since, and have another agency called Republics that is a little over 30 million in revenue.
Very cool. Well, excited to have all of our panelists on the conversation today. Bring some interesting and different perspectives on website retainers, how to help you grow your business with website retainers, also improve retention, deliver great results for your clients, happy agency, happy life, right? So let's get into it. At a high level, right? How does website care drive retention and upselling? Like, why should web agencies and digital agencies care about website care? Nick, you want to kick us off, man?
Yeah. So I think you can deliver a result and then everybody's happy right when you deliver it. But 3-4 months down the line, inevitably something's going to happen, especially if they're involved in actually the day-to-day of things. So I'm sure we've all probably got an email like, hey, my site's broken. And you're like, well, typically things don't just break without something happening. So can you maybe let me know, what happens? Like, oh, I updated all the plugins without checking anything, or, oh, I updated WordPress. And so I think, having that sort of ability to offer that website care as an ongoing offering really helps not only make your service, seem much more valuable, but also it keeps them happy because nothing's breaking because you know exactly what to do to help that. It sometimes can just be hard to communicate that result beforehand, but pretty easy after the fact when they wake up one day and their website's broken.
I used to, when we first started our agency, I don't think we understood that websites needed to be maintained ongoing. And I think we even promised something like, oh, well, we'll update your website for free for life, or we'll fix bugs for free for life. It just sounded like a good idea. We didn't do that for very long, but I still hear, early stage agencies say things like that, where they'll do, lifetime updates to the website. And I think that they don't realize how often clients maybe break things and change things with their website, and maybe not necessarily for the better. Jason, how have you used web care to drive retention and upselling?
Well, I mean, the more you can chat with your client, the better, right? A lot of people think it's set it and forget it. I always wanted to chat with them on an ongoing basis to really learn more about their business, what they're going through, their struggles, what their goals are. And I could actually upsell them. And then also too, I wanted predictability in our business, right? That's one of the things that helped us out when we sold the first agency. And that's what we look for when we're actually buying agencies is, do they have predictability? And if you're doing web care and you have continual reoccurring revenue, it just makes it a lot easier for you.
Yeah. Kelly, what's your take on this?
Well, very similar to both Nick and Jason, it keeps you in front of your customer. It's that regular interaction, because if you're not touching your customer, somebody else will be. They're going to be getting notices. They're going to be, hey, we can do this great thing for you. It's like, well, these guys haven't done anything for me. And maybe you were doing a ton of things. They just don't know. So keeping that conversation going, I think just like Jason was saying too, that's when they tell you what they really want or where their pain points are. And that's the opportunity to offer more services to help solve their problems. But you have to know what their problems are. So you gotta stay in front of them and keep up with them, as well as obviously adding real value in the maintenance and the upgrades so that they don't have the problems. I used to, tongue in cheek, say, if you don't know why you're paying me, I'm doing my job right. And I've since grew out of that and go, wait a minute, if they don't know why they're paying me, then they don't know why they're paying me. So now over communication is now actually a much, much better strategy and has really helped out and makes them feel more comfortable with what's happening.
Something stood out to me when you just said that, set it and forget it, Jason. And I think, Kelly, you just kind of hit on this as well, of being in front of your customers and making sure you have a regular cadence with them. I guess, like, why do people have that desire for like set and forget? I mean, I feel like what I've learned over time is that the more you talk to your clients, typically the more business they do with you. But then, some of us just feel like, oh, if we just pile all these clients on and we never have to talk to them, right? We might have a good business, right? Like, why do we think we have that set and forget mindset sometimes?
I think we're all programmed, as human beings to kind of chase the newest thing. And when we get the clients, right, we kind of celebrate, and then we're like, okay, cool. We did all we had to. Let's move on and let's go on to the next thing. But what I think agency owners really need to realize is just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean your team doesn't need to do it. So have someone on your team that actually likes that. I always joke with agency owners that hire a project manager or account manager, and they're very different types of people, right? Project managers, and I think a lot of agency owners are more of that project manager state of going, I need to get stuff done and then I feel better, versus account managers really want to kind of create new stuff and how can we actually grow? So you got to kind of, if you're not that account manager type and you don't have those traits, you need to actually think about who do we need to hire in order to do that.
Yeah.
So we know kind of maybe at a high level, like why web care might help with retention or in growing our business. But like, what do you guys see are kind of the key elements? I mean, I've heard some things already around, maintenance and updates or fixing clients stuff that they've broken. Nick, I mean, what do you see are some of the key elements that you just, you got to have in your web care plans?
Yeah, it kind of goes off the previous question, which is like in the beginning, it would be very much that kind of, okay, we built something, move on to the next thing. But then it became like, okay, 3 months down the line, someone's like, well, what have I been paying you for this thing that you were supposed to be doing? And that's where it's like, okay, there's not that communication happening. So they don't know exactly what is happening, even though there are services being performed. So that's where I started kind of increasing the touch points. So, start letting them know, hey, we just did this for you. So I'd say like my key element would definitely be that communication aspect of things. So making sure they're apprised to what's going on, because it also sparks, it to be top of mind, their website, what might happen in the future, because they might be doing their day-to-day job, but you're, reaching out to them saying, hey, we just did this thing with your website. That might start sparking something in them thinking, oh, well, actually we have this need for something on the website now that they didn't think of before. Or again, because like their job isn't, okay, I'm in charge of our company's website. They have, other responsibilities. So being able to be top of mind, I think is a really useful thing.
So we got communication, some level of cadence with our customers. Jason or Kelly, what are some other elements that you think are essential for your web care strategy?
I would say one of the key things we're focusing on right now is automation. That whatever we do provide on that regular cadence, that as much as possible, it's as automatic as possible from our perspective. You still communicate, you still talk to the customer. It's not about, hey, this got emailed to you automatically. It was, no, this got put together automatically. We can now analyze it and now communicate with the customer So things that we used to do by hand that would take 45 minutes or something like that now take 5 minutes. And now we're able to just focus on the information, plus that automation clues us in when there's issues or other problems, as long as someone's looking at the stats or the whatever's coming in. And so that piece helps scale. And that's an issue we fought with for a while, because it was mostly me, or me and 2 account managers. Whereas, and we're putting all the pieces together, and automating that really cuts that time down to where we can just focus on the real value that's being added.
I know when I think of automation, Cloudways has a great add-on called Save Updates that will actually go through and update your websites, right? Update the plugins, update WordPress, and it'll do some image comparison to see if, make sure the website's still online. Back to, Nick's point, right? What other tools do you guys use when it comes to automating? Like when you're thinking about your strategy and saying, hey, we can charge X for web care, but we know in the back of our minds we have these tools that are going to make this stuff really efficient and profitable for us as an agency to manage.
Jason?
Are you talking about just managing for the website care, or are you talking about managing the agency?
Yeah, I think just any tools that help with that automation, Kelly, right? I mean, or Jason, right? Like any other things, like safe updates is an example, but for our listeners out there, I mean, if we are talking about automation, is there any cool thing that you've been able to implement that has saved you a lot of time when it comes to managing like 300 websites on a web care plan?
So right now we have a low number of high value clients, but what we're doing is getting in that WordPress dashboard. So in addition to adding services like the safe upgrades that Cloudways offers, is how do we take all the individual elements and put them into one dashboard? And there's a number of choices for that, and a lot of them are good. I mean, today versus 5 years ago, what you can get today is pretty phenomenal. And so we're figuring out how to do that. And so the problem we have now is we've got our stats that we've automated. We've actually worked with an open source stats program to do exactly what we need. But then we also have uptime monitoring, and that has a report. We also have what plugins and things were upgraded for the customer. We have that report. And so now we're looking at that dashboard that covers 90% of that. Then we only have to tweak that last element. So right now you're kind of catching us right at this. In order to scale further, we got to take all these things we've done individually and turn them into a bigger piece. And that's where we're only 2 months at Cloudways. And it's like, wow, this stuff goes fast, works well. And things like the safe updates is giving us an element that we can use. And then with all the reporting that already exists at Cloudways, we can now take through the API and pull those reports into the dashboard and tools that we're using.
Very cool. And I love to hear that a couple months in, you're already feeling the love. So that's great. Oh, yeah. When I think of strategy, it's always like, will people buy this thing? And I'm curious what y'all's take is on making web care something that's desirable by our clients. I've heard some agency owners say, oh, you need to buy this because it's like insurance. And I think that's an interesting pitch, but I also feel like I hate buying insurance, right? It's like, I don't know if I want to be in that business, right? I want to be in a business where somebody's buying something that really helps them and gets them excited, right? Not being, selling something that's insurance where it's like, oh, I guess I have to buy homeowners insurance, right? There could be a hailstorm, right? But nobody gets really excited about that. So how do you guys position web care when you're actually talking with clients?
I would actually bake it into the strategy and everything else that you're doing. I'm the same way. Who wants to add more insurance? And then you're just making it kind of, okay, I built you something that's probably going to break. Like literally, I remember buying a car and people are like, well, you need to get the extended warranty. And be like, or no, I was at Home Depot buying something. They're like, you sure you want to buy the extended warranty because this thing always breaks? I'm like, well, I don't want it then. Like, you take your piece of shit back. I don't need this thing. So I always like to kind of bake it into other things, in order to help them out rather than saying, hey, I'm just going to sell you web care. I want to position it more as, hey, I'm going to constantly look at your business and help you grow to get to your goal of what you need to do. And here's some of the things that we're going to do for you. So,
yeah, that's cool. Here's this thing, it's gonna break. Pay us more money, right? Versus like, hey, we've got this amazing thing. Let's help you go out and build cool things with it, right? Like that definitely sounds like a more interesting value proposition. Although maybe that tactic at Home Depot does work on some people. Maybe they're like, oh, okay, it's gonna break. Well, I better get the insurance.
oh no, every time they tell me that, I'm like, well, take it back. I don't want it.
Yeah. Kelly?
No, well, sorry to jump in. Well, mine's pretty straightforward. Somebody has to do this work. So I let the customer know, here's all the things that you need to do to maintain, your website. The same thing you would for a car or something else. Either you can do it or we can do it. But here's the list. Who's doing the uptime monitoring? Who's doing the plugin upgrade? Who's doing the backups? Who's doing the rollbacks when there's an issue? Who deals with the malware? Who's tracking, the attempted logins and, the web application firewall? So you just list it out. And I just do it in a very honest way. I don't do it to try to overwhelm them or say, hope they don't understand what I'm really saying. It's like, no, this is literally what it is. You can do it or we can do it. And everyone's like, oh, gosh, I don't want to do that. But they also understand this is just part of the care and maintenance of having a website. Just like you can't just, your business also needs to be maintained, and cars in your home and everything has to be maintained. It's just making that decision and giving them the trade-off.
Yeah, I love that. Somebody has to do this, and
right.
And being more, more direct and kind of on your client's team. Like, hey, you can do this. Here's how to do it. Or you could save time, use that time to focus on other elements of your business that maybe would help with growth. Nick, how do you position your website care plans when you're selling them?
Yeah, so basically what Kelly just said. But I always try to bring it up very upfront in the whole process to let them know, because obviously it looks kind of bad if at the very end you just say, oh, by the way, you need to be paying X amount of money per month for this thing I just built you, otherwise it's going to break, or otherwise you're going to have a optimal experience. Because it's like you paying someone to buy a house and it's like, oh, the roof's going to start leaking after a few months or something like that. So I always try to start having the conversation in the beginning, but then at the end kind of do what Kelly was mentioning, like, here's all the things you need to do. You technically could do them yourself, but you might not feel comfortable from that technical standpoint, or you could have somebody like myself in the team kind of help do that for you. And I'd say probably 8 times out of 10, they end up having us do it because they don't really want to, accidentally have something break. But again, like, even if you build a website with very minimal plugins, a custom theme that is really well-rounded, like, you can still have issues if you just click update on everything. So having that sort of, team in your back pocket, I find is like a really good benefit for most people.
Let's move to this question. Impact of regular updates on customer retention. So, does it help? Do customers stay longer if they are paying for additional web care services, or is there a shelf life to that? What's been your experience?
I'll jump in. I looked at this and I said, what's the impact of not regular updates on customer retention, right? Because then they wonder what they're paying for. They don't know what's going on. Whoever is talking to them, I said this at the beginning, is the one who'll get their attention. Well, this guy said they can do this amazing thing for us, or this company, or this whatever. I want that because you're not in front of them. And then it's also all the missed opportunities, that conversation where they tell you what they need, where their pain points are, or even just for your own life, that you've made your future updates, customer support easier because you've kept up with updates. It's always easier to do the incremental updates than to have a, OMG, the site just got hacked and the backup is 4 months old, and you got this whole thing to have to deal with, which I've done too many times. And it's like, it's just better to keep up with that. So if you don't have regular updates for customer retention, that's what happens.
Somebody swoops in and takes your client.
Yes. Yeah, that's easy to do. Yeah, absolutely. I'll pay attention to you. This guy isn't.
I had one of my very first clients ever that we built a website for. They, it was kind of that set and forget scenario, Jason, where, they paid us monthly for hosting, and it was out of sight, out of mind. We never called them. We never emailed them. And they stayed for a while. But one day they called us and they said, hey, we need you to change our DNS over to this new host. And I said, well, why would you do that? And they said, well, we just built a whole new website. And I said, what do you mean? They said, oh, yeah. Like, and I took a look at it and it was this big e-commerce website. I'm like, what'd you guys, they spent like $1,000 with us for their first website. It was one of the very first products we ever built. And, they spent $20,000 building this cool e-commerce site with some random business. And they were like, well, we didn't even know if you guys did this anymore. And I'm like, what? We just lost a client, right? Just because we had, never called, never checked in with them. So I think you're spot on there, Kelly, that, it's less maybe about, making them happy, but more just staying connected with them, having an excuse to regularly check in with them, let them know the value that you're delivering. Have you been able to, upsell? I guess when you think about retention, I'm not just thinking about like how long are they staying, but like, can you use website care as an inroad to other solutions, as a foot in the door almost?
Yeah, I mean, I had a client not too long ago. He did a lot of work for Spanx, and they were doing something very similar, like that you mentioned, Brent, where they added so many services over the years. They literally had Spanx as a client for 7 years. And then one day Spanx called them up and said, hey, we're using this other agency. We need you to do this. Like, they weren't getting rid of them. But what Chris actually realized was, he's like, oh my God, you're paying millions of dollars to another agency to do services that we actually added over the years, but they just never got in front of, of them to let them know about it. And any excuse you have to call a client, to chat with a client, is always a great one to kind of figure out. And I always say, like, ask the question, what's your biggest challenge right now? Just ask, and they'll tell you. Like, there was literally a survey. I was chatting with a buddy of mine, Drew, and he did a survey to agency clients, and one of the things is the clients were like, hey, I want the agency to ask me more questions. I want them to really dive into our business and really understand that, so they can actually be more of the trusted advisor. And so that's what I want everyone to kind of think about, is how do we ask more questions?
Yeah, love that. I'm going to do we have a quick announcement here from the Cloudways team, and then we'll get back to this amazing panel here in just a second. We've got a free $100 hosting credits challenge, and all you have to do is answer this question, I believe, and put your answer in the comments section of this live stream. What language does WordPress use? And panelists, please don't jump in on this. Hopefully this is not a nail biter, but if you answer this question, throw it in the chat below and let us know what language does WordPress use, and that's going to give you, you're able to win $100 in hosting credits from the Cloudways team as part of our 20th anniversary of WordPress celebration here this week. So, I mean, that's just a gimme, right? So put the answer in the comments, and the Cloudways team will connect with you and hook you up with that hosting credit. So very excited to see some folks jumping in on there already. So very cool. So and I didn't know if others had any other thoughts on that impact of regular updates on retention or on upselling. Actually, I had kind of a follow-up on that of why do agency owners have a hard time regularly connecting with clients, right? Like, I know it's like so obvious, right? We should want to connect with our clients, but I talk to agencies every day. Jason, I know you do as well, man. Like, sometimes people just don't like to call their clients on a regular basis or talk to their clients on a regular basis for some reason. Anything that keeps you guys motivated? Like, Nick, when you think about touching base with your clients, like, how do you keep it interesting for them and not just like routine, like, hey, updated your plugins again this month, right? Like, how do you keep it interesting to get them engaged?
Yeah, so like I have automated emails that will go out, and it's typically corresponding to like the type of service we're rendering for them. But then in that email, there's always a link to schedule a call if they need to like, do that with someone like myself or someone on the team. So that sort of keeps us honest and forces us to, because it's pretty prominent there. So if anything is top of mind, they have that easy access. And then sometimes there'll be an email that's directly just about, hey, want to catch up. So it has, nothing to do with, hey, we just did this thing for you, but it's like, hey, do you want to catch up for 15 minutes to see, how we could be helping you further? Are there any pain points with your website or anything else digitally? And I find that works pretty well because, we have a separate calendar for that. So we know exactly what that was for.
Very cool. So yeah, automated emails, conversational questions, engagement. Jason, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think it has to have a purpose to it too, right? Your clients don't just want to say, oh, I've never, and especially with the vendors that I've used, like if they just sent me an email and says, hey, let me know if you want to book a call, most of the time they're probably not going to do it. What I find is beneficial is, hey, I have an idea for you.
Ooh, love it.
I was, and literally, I think we all need to put people in charge of growing accounts. One of the biggest things on scaling your business is growing your accounts. Like if I had to pick like 3 things, that's one of the main ones. But we don't have someone for it. We have someone for marketing. We have someone for sales. Maybe we have someone for collections, but we don't have someone dedicated to running that team. And so when we actually started scaling Solar Velocity faster and Republics faster, we had dedicated people. We had a dedicated team for that specific thing. And that's really what can catapult agencies very quick because they've already given you money. They're 20 times more likely to give you more money. You just need to ask for it.
Yeah. Going off that. So I used to work at Google and on cloud accounts, and they had account managers. And you would think, oh, they're probably just there to say, hey, how are you doing? No, they're looking at all their credit usage to be like, how can we help them use more on our platform? How can we help them, grow on our platform? Because if they're not doing that, they're going to AWS, to Azure to try to do that. So it's like keeping them top of mind, but also how can we help them grow on our platform versus them going somewhere else?
Yeah, 100%. So we've talked a lot about the upside. Challenges, both for you and your clients, overcoming website care challenges, pitfalls. I'm sure maybe we have some horror stories here, some things that have happened. I know for us, right? We've had this is less common now, but when you've got clients paying for web care, and then maybe a server does go down, right? And then you're like, you're like all hands on deck fixing it, which is part of the beauty of having web care. But, sometimes clients are going, well, hey, if I'm paying for this, like that must mean that things like that are never going to happen, which is really not really the reality, right? At least not that I've been able to achieve. What kind of web care challenges have you guys experienced? Kelly, you want to jump in on this one?
Sure. It's, I think one of the things, and it goes back to even the previous question, that regular communication, everyone's scared to spend 5 minutes or 30 minutes with their customers. And it's like, we actually go a step further where we become, we remember when we say, you can update your site or we can update it, but it's also, you can add pages to your site or we can add pages for you. And then we become a team member where we're actually communicating daily or weekly. And then the challenge becomes, wait a minute, what if somebody starts using you a lot and it goes way past what what you were budgeting for? Well, now they're costing you money. I mean, literally, I don't mean profit. I mean, just literally you're negative with your resources. And so really getting an idea of what you're offering, having those guardrails of here's what you're getting, but here's also what you're not getting. And if you want that extra service, you can. But I also found open communication when we started getting super used by a couple customers. They knew we were using it. I said, hey, we're going to up next quarter. We're going to up our maintenance bill to this much. That should help cover everything. They're like, every time was, okay, it makes sense because they saw the value they were getting as we were interacting. So it's that, that dance, I guess. And it all has to do with not being afraid to continually engage with your customer when and as they need it.
I feel like the all-you-can-eat promises I see that happen all the time. People think, oh, I'm just gonna, unlimited updates or whatever, and I think it can be an interesting value proposition until somebody comes in and like eats the buffet and the building, right? Like
Right.
somebody comes in and is like, oh yeah, I'll take that, right? And they're maybe a bigger business than you're used to. And then you end up delivering. I mean, I've seen people delivering $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 worth of services for $800 a month. You know, that's people are basically getting a full-time web pro for a fraction of the cost of a FTE, right? What are their challenges?
I think that's one of the big ones, but one of the solutions to that is being able to walk away and fire that client. If the person's going to sit at the buffet for 4 hours and then kind of go back again, like kick them out of your restaurant. Like, that's the anomaly. So
yeah,
that's what I would tell everyone.
So be in a good position, right? As a business to feel confident about, whether you need to serve somebody or not. Yeah.
And I think, at least in my case, that's only really happened with like smaller clients. Cause I feel like when it gets to a certain level, they sort of like, they understand if they're hiring a professional, that's going to cost some money, but they're also kind of aware if somebody's promising you something that no one else promised you, they're either amazing and everybody knows about them, or they're not, maybe they're inexperienced, or they don't actually know what's involved or what could be involved. So they're sort of over promising and they're going to inevitably under deliver. And they might, some people might not realize that's going to happen and they take them up on that offer. But unfortunately, like there's only so much you can do to let them know, hey, that's not really something that's going to work out in your favor, most likely.
Yeah. Yeah. So not over promising, having some guardrails, open communication, being ready and willing to fire clients for some potential pitfalls. I guess, proactive, this question here, how does proactive maintenance enhance security and trust? I mean, I would assume that's kind of part of the pitch here for WebCare in particular, is that, we're going to maintain your WordPress site. We're going to make sure the plugins are updated. We're not going to make sure that we're not breaking your site, which would hopefully create trust. I think it's almost pretty inherent in the offer, but are there cases where a client thinks that you're taking care of this stuff, but there still could be threats or websites that go down that could almost tarnish your relationship with a client if you've promised them that that's not going to happen?
At least in my cases, it's always been if they have involvement with the WordPress installation. So I had a state university client once, and they had somebody on their team. They would constantly ask to update things. And I don't know if this was intentional, but they would end up breaking things and they would not take responsibility for them, which, completely human kind of reaction for things when you break something. But when you finally get to the bottom of it, it's like, okay, every time this person did something, they were breaking it because they didn't know how to properly do it, because they were not part of the university at the time the website was built. So they were never taught. So then it was like, okay, how can we fix this solution? And it's like, hey, by the way, just small caveat, if you ever have people you add to your team, we can help train them. It's like, sort of, it opened up another kind of revenue stream. It doesn't get used maybe that often, but still letting them know, hey, we can help you make sure this doesn't happen. But that was definitely a head scratcher when it was happening.
So having, so you guys can promise security and trust, but sometimes, if it wasn't for those pesky clients getting into the back end, right? What does this update all button do? But
I think you also keep saying, we promise these things. Like, well, what I promise is we'll do all the best things that you can do as best as they can be done. It's a arms race of who can hack your site and who can't. And so it's like, we're making sure that the doors are locked on your car, the windows are rolled up, you're not in a convertible, that, we've got an alarm system on the car, but someone can still break into your car. These things can happen. And I think being proactive with your customer, letting them know these things can happen. And here's what we do to help mitigate them. So we prevent them to begin with. And when they do happen, here's how we can clean up your site, restore a backup that's only 24 hours old or less, or however often it makes sense. If it's e-commerce, we want a lot more often than that. But those kinds of things. So I think it's really communicating with the customer so they're less surprised. They wish it never happens, but things go down. They happen. Like stuff breaks. Weird things happen. So you just got to be honest with them up front.
Yeah, I really like that, Kelly. So that honesty, communication, setting the stage for, look, these are the potential pitfalls with having a website. I mean, I think there's great, obviously great advantages, right? It's online, 365 days a year, 24/7. It's a salesperson for you. It's a marketing channel, but it does things can happen. And here's how this retainer or whatever is going to help us to mitigate and overcome that.
Oh, sorry. One other thing I just wanted to add, because I just had this happen recently. In the event someone is responsible for breaking something that isn't you, it's a really good thing to have access logs so that you're not, no one wants to be the one that points the blame to somebody, but to be able to say, hey, this was not something we did, helps kind of protect that reputation and makes them be like, okay, maybe they didn't break something just so they could fix it or some type of thing. Because, some people always kind of have that in the back of their mind. So being able to be like, this is exactly what happened, I find is a really good thing to be able to do.
Yeah, totally. How are you guys using analytics in upselling or even just in the regular reporting? I mean, I think that I see a lot of clients out there. Some businesses are really tied in on their what their website's doing. Other businesses are kind of, busy doing other stuff. How are you using analytics or seeing agencies use analytics in web care, sales, resales, upsells?
I mean, it really goes back to the initial conversation that you had when they were a prospect on what their goals are and where they're at now, and constantly showing them a benchmark of where they're actually going or what we can actually do in order to increase that. So, if I can't tell you how many times an agency thinks they're doing an amazing job for that client, and then the client fires them and they're like, well, I didn't even see that coming. Well, it's because they didn't understand the analytics, or they weren't kind of emphasizing the analytics and making it understandable. I think agency owners make it too complex, and then you make that customer feel really dumb, and customers don't want to hang out with people that make them feel dumb. So how can you kind of make it where, hey, I was checking out the website and noticed the traffic was starting to have a downtick. Have you thought about X, Y, and Z? No, I haven't. Well, cool. Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Almost there's the analytics and the data, but then there's the insights. And if you can bring those insights to your customer to start a conversation versus, every month being like, hey, let's go and open up Google Analytics and let's go through every single report together and until you're kind of like numb and don't want to talk to anybody anymore. Nick, how are you using analytics in your regular conversations with clients around web care?
Yeah, so we use a lot of like Looker Studio to set up insights for clients for them to actually see what's going on, but it also helps us see what's going on. So, they have a link to a dashboard that looks all nice, has their logo on it. They're probably not looking at that often, but we are to be able to see key points that might be important for them. And it's basically just it used to be like Google Data Studio, basically. So you just put everything in there that's relevant to the client. You can kind of see it all at one view. So we're able to always kind of see that. And then if there is kind of a point to be raised, like, oh, traffic dropped substantially, we can go investigate that further, but we have something that's more easily accessible kind of at a glance.
Yeah, very cool. Are you guys using audits to boost retention or even boost sales? Like, driving more people into web care plans, like doing audits of their existing website. If you didn't build a website, or maybe the client didn't sign up for a web care plan right away and you want to upsell it on them later, are you using that kind of method to get people to buy a web care plan?
I see everyone using audits, and I see it kind of going down a little bit just based on kind of the word. And I kind of like opportunity analysis or something, right? Like, who wants to get audited or who wants to get reviewed? Because they know you're just going to point out the crappy things and the things that will allow you to sell more. But I always like to kind of do it of, hey, there's opportunities here. Let's kind of look at this opportunity analysis of what we can actually do in order to enhance. And then you can use that as, you've already got your foot in the door, because it sounds like you guys are hosting the sites and maintaining the sites. Now it's just about how can we enhance? How can we move them forward and really understand what they're looking for?
Yeah, I like that opportunity analysis versus audits, they do kind of feel like something the IRS does, right? You're like, oh man, I don't want to deal with that. We got only just a few minutes left, and I did want to get to this question for sure. Pricing, and you guys can decide how far you want to disclose here. I mean, I see a very wide range of what people can charge for web care. I mean, some people are just doing bare minimum kind of website maintenance and security. Some people are grouping in marketing services or other website updates. What do you guys? How do you approach pricing?
Well, I'd say for us, we're a little different because a lot of our business is that custom application development for customers. But it's the same way you do anything. And as we are, even adding automation, step one, like with all price estimates, what is it actually going to cost your business? Like how many hours for your account manager or you or whoever is going to be doing and providing the services, then double that because you underestimate it easily. And then go, okay, what's the hourly rate we should be getting for that number of hours a month? I go, well, that's the absolute bare minimum, could never go less than that. And that is good to know because when someone says, well, can't you do it for 500? It's like, no, that's half of what it even costs us. This is really a $2,000 thing, every 3 months or whatnot. So I would say, number one, make sure whatever you're offering is that you've covered all your costs, and then whatever your markup pricing and stuff with that. And I think the other is make sure that what you're offering is of value to the customer, because once you know what you can do, what is the value of that to the customer, to know these things, to have that available, and then that can be that piece that goes above it. And it really depends on the customer. Like if you're dealing with an enterprise customer, as Nick mentioned earlier too, it's a different conversation. We lost business because we charged too little. They wondered what we were missing in the request for a proposal because we were half the cost of everyone else. Like, but I tripled what it would cost us. I don't understand, because the value of what we're doing was so much higher. And if you're dealing with small business, mom and pop websites, you're going to have a different kind of a conversation. You're going to lean on automation and maybe smaller touch points versus, hey, we're doing 15 hours a week of helping them maintain their site if it's an enterprise customer. So it really comes down to, though, how much is it really costing you, and never go below that lowest price, which again, double or triple it before you even consider that your lowest price, because we always think things are going to go smoothly and we always underestimate. At least that's been my history and everyone I've worked with. So
you make sure you're covering your cost, your markup, making sure you're framing around value.
Yes.
Nick, how do you approach pricing?
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends if you're the one that built the website versus you have somebody coming to you looking for ongoing support. Like the ones that we build, most of them are custom with a lot of kind of third-party integrations. So we know what's involved with that and what would be involved to fix that. So we typically tell them like, okay, here's what we would imagine this takes just from a maintenance standpoint. Now, again, you could do that yourself if you wanted to, or you could have us do it. But also we think it's realistic based on the conversations we had. You're probably going to do, X amount of hours of additional work per month. So we sort of try to bake it into that so that they have not only the basis of making sure everything's functioning properly covered, but also they have room for those one-off tasks, because no one wants to, have to send an email like, hey, how much is this going to cost? How many hours is this going to take? Every single request they want. They want to just be able to shoot over an email and know someone has it covered. The other one is like, if someone is coming to us and we have no idea of the site, like we could have robust e-commerce functionality, third parties, all that stuff. We sort of do like a trial period to where we can assess it. Like we know we're going to be paid, we're all good there, but we're able to figure out, okay, it took us, 10 hours to make sure that you were covered properly. Is this seem like something you would want to be doing on an ongoing basis? Because again, if you go like WordPress maintenance, you're going to get a whole bunch of paid ads. They're like, oh, we got you covered for $50 a month. I don't think that's something you'd want to sign up for. So anybody's like, oh, no worries, we don't need to see anything, it's going to be $150 a month. That's not going to be a good situation for anybody.
Yeah, totally. Jason, you're going to maybe give us your perspective on pricing on this one. Maybe give us like the lightning round answer as we try to wrap up our stream today.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say about pricing is figure out their expectation, and then make sure their expectation is well above your bottom line. Because like like Kelly was saying, you could lose an account because they're going to be like, what are you missing? Even though you might have doubled or tripled or quadrupled, you could have 1,000x it. So figure out their expectation, and then magically meet them there if it's a lot higher than your pricing.
Very good. So see what they're thinking first, and if it's a lot higher, then figure out how to create that value with them. So love it. Jason, Nick, Kelly, thank you so much for jamming with us today. It's been a lot of fun. I see lots of folks jumping in on chat on the trivia question. If you missed that, make sure you rewind, look at what that question was to get that $100 hosting credit with Cloudways. We're celebrating 20 years of WordPress. I'm feeling like we're all grown up going into our junior year of college or something as a platform, right? One of these days we'll be like middle-aged WordPress, but for right now, it's the fun college years. So 20 years of WordPress. Thanks everyone for watching our session today. We've got some more great content coming up here very soon. Answer that trivia question and stay tuned for more great content from the Cloudways team. And again, thanks Kelly, Nick, and Jason for adding so much value today. That's our program, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.